Hello, listeners. This is Dr. Klioze with Shield of Life, and I've got some great people to share with you today. A great show. We're going to talk about the body and healing and how important the soil is for our body and healing. So I have Cameron James, or we call him Cam. And then we have Michael Fellbauer, which you all know very well. And we've had a really dynamic day today where we all met in the food forest in my backyard. We had the Ormond Chamber join us, which was very good, to teach them about soil health and how that matches and parallels our gut biome. On previous shows, we've talked about the gut biome. But what's really important for you to understand is that feeding the gut biome requires you to get foods that are without pesticides and chemicals. And the best way to do that is understand that your own body can take in vegetables that you can grow in your yard, and without a lot of expense, without a lot of stress, but it is enjoyable. And while you're out there caring for your garden and putting in healthy vegetables and fruit trees, you actually are improving your overall mental and physical health, because you're out in the sun, you're getting some electromagnetic waves from the earth, and you're also going to be eating something very good, and it just brings about a lot of peace. So Cam and I bonded probably about 3 years ago, when I decided that it was important for the education of my patients and the people that I worked with, clients, and for the world at large, to understand the power of the soil. So in many lecture, I talk about soil health. The healthier the soil, the healthier the gut biome, the healthier the soil, the healthier the plant, and the healthier the person who's eating those plants. And it really impacts our brain health, our gut health, our muscle health, our overall physiologic and spiritual health. So when I went into an area called Galt's Landing in Orlando, they were taking opportunities for people to build their backyard. And because I'm a busy physician, I knew that I wouldn't be able to do that effectively. And sometimes when you don't understand perfectly how systems work, it's better to invest in somebody who does, because you save a lot of money. So I could have done a lot of trial and error over the years and spent a lot of my free time learning about all this stuff, or hire somebody like Cam, who is with We Grow Food. That is his company. And he came in, and it was so cool. And he looked at the topography of the land. He looked at the sun rising and setting, the direction of the land, where the land was wetland versus dry. We talked about the kind of plants that I wanted. I predominantly have a lot of vegetables, but we do have a lot of fruit trees. So we have varying layers of plants that are needed, bushes to trees to ground covers, all of which have various purposes, some medicinal, some of them nutritional, some of them give back nutrients to the soil. And all of that is something that I can do and manage despite being a busy physician with busy practice in and outside my day job. I have Shield of Life on the outside. And it's really interesting how it's impacted the life of myself, my husband, and my community, because we bring people to our gardens and help them see the power of a food forest and regenerative farming. So I want to pass the camera to Cam, or the focus on Cam now, and explain a little bit of what We Grow Food is about and how you started.
Yeah. Andrea, thank you for having me. It's been a beautiful blessing to have a relationship with you for the last couple of years, but to helping you develop your soil, your land, your home. I think you're increasing the value of you and your own family to your community, the people that you've brought in. And it's been incredible to work with homeowners who are stewarding their lands and their properties for the last couple of years to feed their families. And I think a lot of the gardens and the systems that we're building are going to impact families and communities far beyond our generation that's alive today. So thank you for the opportunity to do that. So about 3 years ago, I would say I definitely received a message from God, and that was to grow food. And it sent me on a journey. Over the next couple of months, I was really binge learning how to grow food. I was looking at food forestry. I was looking at permaculture. I was looking at edible landscaping. And we live in a world today where you can learn a lot of information very quickly.
So can I stop you for one second? For listeners who don't know what permaculture is and what food forests are, maybe define those for them.
Yeah, cool. I define how I would define permaculture is it's two words in one, and that's permanence and culture. Permanence being something that exists over time, and culture being the act of human existence. So we're talking about a system that supports human existence through time. Is very supportive to us. Food forestry, another term that I use that I think makes it easier for people to understand is forest farming. So I call it farming with trees, right? So building a forest using trees, or building a farm using trees, right? So that's how I would define it.
So I like that. And so what's really important is to understand, do forests need constant management?
Good question. Good question. So how I explain the development of let's start with forest. If we looked at a pasture or a meadow and we just left it alone, over time it would turn into a forest. It would probably take multiple hundreds of years. Any one person wouldn't watch this happen in our lifetime, right? But through science and through observation, we've been able to just understand how forests develop over time. So there's certain ways that we can go into a landscape, we can plant it and develop it and manage it, and intentionally intervene with the system in a way that succeeds it faster. So I always say that, and this is one way of looking at it, is what we're trying to do is take what would happen in 100 years, and we're trying to do it in about 15 to 20 years. So it's a little bit contrary to how people will buy a fruit tree, stick it in the middle of their yard and say, grow and produce for me, right? And we can get that to work by, heavy inputs, and that's compost and mulch and then water and tending to it and taking care of it. But if we look at the way a forest develops over time, there's early succession plants there's just early plants that show up. Pioneers, we call them pioneers. Like when somebody shows up, we talk about the pioneers that came to the West. They were the first people to kind of settle on the land. So the land works the same way as there's pioneer plants that show up and they start to recycle nutrients and develop it. And over time, those plants will die and phase out. We have a richer ecology, which is just the soil health. That's more of a prime environment to plant fruit trees, to plant your veggies and things of that nature, more productive species. So again, what we're doing is we're speeding up that process by managing these other plants on purpose. And then when you have your productive species, whether it's your fruit trees, your peaches and your plums, or your mangoes, your avocados, or if you want to grow peppers and tomatoes and long beans like you have at home and herbs, either way, those are plants that want those healthier conditions. So we have to create those healthier conditions. We're either doing it artificially by just bringing stuff in one-off, or we develop the entire ecosystem, creating an environment for these trees and plants to thrive.
So let's talk about that ecosystem. Yeah. So there are nutrients that the soil needs. So those are going to be like carbon and nitrogen and phosphorus. So how do we get carbon, nitrogen, and phosphorus into the soil and other nutrients that that are very important for vegetables and fruits to proliferate and grow strong without using fertilizers?
Yeah, so I'm kind of expanding on the comment that I made about these pioneer species or these early succession plants, right? There's certain plants that handle, let's call them harsh soil conditions, which might just be the meadow. If you look at the meadow, there's not a lot of organic matter. There's not a lot of substance in the soil. To make that easier to understand, it's typically sandy. Here in Florida, there's not a good growing medium, right? So there's certain plants that'll grow great in that. They're perfect. They'll handle those and they'll be like, cool, we'll grow. So by planting those species in there, they go in there and they grow very quickly. And then by chopping those and pruning those, and we actually lay that material back down on the ground, so we don't actually take our yard scraps and haul it out. We actually lay it right back down on the soil, and that starts to recycle the very nutrients that you're talking about. So whether it's carbon, nitrogen, calcium, phosphorus, potassium, all these things are being pulled up by these plants. Just when we chop them, we just lay it back down. So those nutrients get recycled back into the soil.
So plants, there's certain nitrogen fixing plants and there's carbon. The base of many plants is carbon. So that's already in there. Some of them have more calcium base, phosphorus base. So this is profound. And so let's talk about the berm and swell, because I think that's an important concept that you created in our backyard that is probably something that listeners don't know about unless they're already into regenerative farming or gardening.
Yeah, this is, I get excited about this piece. Like when I know you wanted to talk today about some of your friends that came to visit, the chamber that came to visit today. I look at this ecological system, right? We're looking at the forest and the garden. These are all ecological systems. When we can capture and encounter natural resources in the sunlight, in the water, and we can actually utilize that in the landscape, we can actually recycle that into something different. So what you're talking about, a swale and a berm, and for somebody that may or may not know what that is, a swale would be a depression in the ground.
Show the camera.
Yeah, it would be a depression down into the soil, and a berm would be the opposite of a mound.
So
above
before
the soil.
the swell, there's a swell, and then there's a berm.
Correct.
And that swell goes how deep?
I'd say it's about 2 feet, 2.5.
And how tall is a berm?
Would be about as tall as the soil that we took out. So another 2 feet. We literally take the soil out of the swale and we put it on top of the ground.
What's the purpose of a swell and berm?
Yeah, so that swale can capture rainwater, right? So when the rain falls, it's going to fall right into the swale. But when you use swales and berms on what's called on contour, but that's the technical term, what we're talking about is on the slope of the landscape, right? So you have a slope that goes from your pool area towards the back of your property. So that means that water runs downhill. So if we put a swell somewhere down the hill, then all the water that's running down the hill, instead of just pooling in your back, creating the mosquito.
We were not able to use because it was soggy all the time and collected even more mosquitoes.
Yep. Instead of that, we're now capturing that water into the swale, and then it's soaking into the berm. So it's falling down now into this groove, this depression down into the ground, and it's soaking into that berm. And now that we have fruit trees and edibles and other plants planted on the berm, those roots are inside the berm. So therefore, the water that went into the swale is now soaking into the berm, where we have those productive edible plants that we want to water or
and
want to
so
irrigate.
The water carries a lot of the nutrients in it that then the plant takes up. So those root systems are stronger and healthier, and the plant's stronger and healthier. What's the difference if I did that versus if I sprayed with Miracle Grow or put Miracle Grow down or other fertilizers that might help my plants grow?
Yeah, so I know we've talked a lot about synthetic fertilizers, and really how I've learned is fertilizers are going into the soil, and then the fruit trees or anything that your vegetables, the root systems are pulling the nutrients from what you put into the ground, right? It just goes in, the plant pulls it. So when that plant runs out of those nutrients, you need to feed it again because it got the nutrients from what you put into the ground, right?
Because the soil wasn't really healthy.
The soil doesn't have the nutrients. It doesn't have it. So it's getting them from you putting them in, right? So if you look at a forest though, there's just trees and branches and twigs and leaves. Everything's on the ground. Those are slowly recycling into the system.
Decomposed.
Yeah, they're decomposed.
Recycling.
So we're trying to mock that system. So instead of you always having to keep spraying and feeding the plant and feeding the plant and feeding the plant, what we're doing by recycling these nutrients is, again, all those nutrients that you named, they're being put back into the soil just from the plants that are already in the system right next to the edible fruit trees.
So like we don't fertilize forests, so we don't have to fertilize our backyard per se.
Yep.
But we do add microbes. So we do spray with microbes 2 or 3 times a year. And let's talk about what those microbes are. So you can get it in the form of worm castings, but you can also do like EM1, which is another fertilizer, or the one that you recommended. And let's talk about what that does for the soil and for the health of the plant.
Yeah, so we're talking about compost tea. So compost tea can be different materials. You can use worm castings. People will use chicken manure. People will use things such as molasses because there's nutrients in these materials. So they are organic materials. Organic just meaning real materials, right? There's other karanja cake, neem cake. There's other materials that come from plants, which is kind of funny. It's the same thing that we're doing in the system, but we've pulled those out of the system. We've broken them down. We've dropped them into a bucket, and we turn on a bubbler or an aerator. That aerator is really just livening up those materials. It's pulling the life. It's activating the life out of all that organic material, creating all those microbes that you're talking about. And for somebody who might not understand that, just picture really small organisms. We as humans are organisms, right? So we're creating and enlivening a lot of those little baby organisms. And then we take that and we actually pour it into the soil. So we're not actually feeding fertilizer to the plants. we're actually stimulating biology and life in the soil so that everybody's working to recycle those very nutrients.
So I liken that to taking yogurt. And
Yeah.
I don't like eating cow yogurt. We've talked about that on the show before because there can be more inflammatory agents related to that than sheep or goat. We as humans are much more akin to sheep or goat dairy than we are cow. But when we take microbes into our gut biome, the microbes do, and they're healthy microbes, the ones that we need, they actually have so many health benefits. They make all our 8B vitamins, the 8K vitamins, it makes our neurotransmitters. And those microbes, when they're healthy, they not only make those vitamins for us and neurotransmitters, but they also produce a side product called short-chain fatty acids that decrease inflammation in our heart and our brain and our kidneys. Now, the microbes in the soil don't per se do making vitamins, but in a way, they may be helping with that because they activate the breakdown of the nutrients in the soil. The plant can absorb those nutrients, so then that plant can provide for you the different types of polyphenols that help neurocognitive issues, so neurologic issues, and brain issues. They can actually decrease systemic inflammation. They can actually improve a lot of disease states. And that's why I believe in the Bible, God told us to eat a lot of vegetables and leaves because they're the healer. Not that you can't eat protein, animal protein, because that's very important for our structures in our bodies. We need protein. But we really need those microbes to actually do their job because we evolved together. So I really love the utilization of the microbes in helping understand the impact that it has on the soil. Now, Michael Felberg is with us, and he was with us this morning in this wonderful display to our chamber, the Ormond Chamber, that wanted to come and do a garden evaluation. That was my ribbon cutting, even though I've been around for 5 years in September. So, Michael, tell me what you experienced and what your thoughts were in this journey today.
Well, it's very interesting when walking through your garden, and it's quite a walk.
Or food forest.
To see what you have growing there, and then to listen to the reason that you had maybe this plant with that plant, how they affected each other. Okay, so it wasn't just putting everything together. There was a reason behind it, which I don't quite understand yet. I understand that it's a necessity to produce what you've been talking about. But obviously, I don't think I could go out in my backyard and start doing this without some help.
This is why we have Cam. I couldn't
Right.
either, Michael.
So, but I like the idea of having good, high quality food available just to go outside. You were talking about, you know, whenever you're fixing for dinner, you can go out, pick the right vegetables and stuff and herbs to go with it right there. So I think that's a great idea, being able to do that, being able to create large gardens for communities to work together to build their gardens so they can help each other in the community. Because not everybody has a backyard that would be appropriate for what we've been talking about. But somewhere in the neighborhood, there is someplace appropriate. And, you know, I look at some of these community gardens that I've read about and seen about, and I can't remember her name, the singer who did it in New York City. She would take empty lots between apartments and develop community gardens for the people that lived there. So they all had something to do. So whether they had the expertise that Cam brings to the table to increase the quality of that food, I don't know, but the idea is great. So I think what I look for is community type gardens, maybe that people can share together. You reduce the labor because you're sharing the labor, and have somebody like Cam come in and teach us what we should be planting and how we should be planting it. Okay. Like I asked you a question before we started, I said the big problem that I would have in my own backyard is I have 2 herds of deer that come in, and I only have a 4-foot fence. How would it distract them from coming in? And Andrea, you told me a type of
garlic, the longevity garlic,
longevity
actually.
garment that I'd have to plant around the whole edge.
Society garlic. Sorry, longevity. That's society spinach, but longevity spinach. But society garlic, actually, when you plant that, the deer really don't like it, and so they try to stay away.
So in order to do my backyard, I'd have to go around, either put up a larger fence And I tell you what, these deers can do some really cool jumping. Or go around the total outer edge of it and plant that society garlic.
You probably could find out how many feet apart to plant
Yeah.
them.
But those are the kinds of things that the average person, my mother was a super gardener. She had 10 green thumbs.
Wow.
Okay. I had none.
You've got something in there.
So having the ability to have somebody like you brought to us, our group today to listen to, and that has that knowledge that can help us do it properly. And this is all sustainable.
Yes.
That's another key. One thing my mother taught me about Florida is, and she was not the type of gardener you are, but she said, because we always have a season where something will grow. Okay? We don't have 6 feet of snow that's covering the ground. And so there's always something in the season here in Florida that will grow. And I think that people have to understand that too.
Right. And that's a true blessing, that we do have that. That's an amazing thing. And we will talk about what Cam is doing around the country in addition to what he's done to my backyard on another show. But I really want to help us and help you as listeners to delve into more about things that you might be doing on a smaller scale. And then maybe, Cam, you can actually give us some information on how they can reach you. So first, let's do that before we forget, because I don't want to end the show without them hearing your information of how to reach you. So I want you to go ahead and give us that. And then again, before we end the show. So your company name is We Grow Food, or the Grow Food Company.
The Grow Food Company, yeah.
And how do they reach you, Cam, if they wanted to ask you questions or maybe get involved in their backyard?
Yeah, the two main mediums right now would be just through the website, thegrowfoodcompany.com. And the other one would
slow.
be...
Say it one more time.
thegrowfoodcompany.com. thegrowfoodcompany.com. You can find us at thegrowfoodcompany.com.
I like it. I like it.
Right? And the other one would be the same name on Instagram or on Facebook. So The Grow Food Company. Eventually, our goal is to get onto YouTube. I think we're exploring TikTok and other mediums.
Yeah.
But right now would be the website, Instagram, and Facebook. Again, The Grow Food Company.
And we work together. Cam and I work together, and we will continue to work together and grow hopefully a healthier Florida, hopefully a healthier country. So we will continue to work with other people who do regenerative farming and help us and help our communities understand the power of what they can do. So on a small scale, you can grow herbs in your yard, and you can begin to grow some vegetables and think about some of these things we talked about. And we need to end the show soon, so I want you to say for them to find you again one more time.
thegrowfoodcompany.com. Yeah, honestly, if you guys want to reach out, we do consultations, we have conversations, and to talk to people about what's possible with their landscape. Me and Andria actually worked for 9 months together before we actually even did something with her property. And that was because we truly assessed both what's possible with their landscape, but also their goals. And I think what happened was we had an idea of what we could do with their property, but once we analyzed the water that was in the back of it was something that was really important to them. So we redesigned the entire landscape to accommodate their personal goals. So I always say we're marrying what's possible with the land, which is where you live, your situation, along with what you're looking to achieve. So whether it's you want to grow vegetables, you want fruit trees, you want a lot of food, or if you just want to enjoy certain you like mangoes or avocados, then we can help people with that as well.
And the other issue is we did have to get it through a homeowners association, but once the homeowners association understood what we were doing, they loved it. They were so excited that we were doing healthy environmental events in our backyard, and we will invite them out because we've talked about that. So, and they were excited to come see the impact that we've had in our yard and in the neighbors' lives.
If I could throw in a real quick comment here, as I know we're wrapping it up, I just really want to hammer on what Michael was saying. Is the goal is to develop micro farms and community centers that are growing food, organic, local, seasonal, nutrient dense food. And a really big vision is I think that Florida can actually feed the country in the way that Mexico currently feeds us. I believe that's the direction that we're going, and it starts by building local food systems the correct way.
And so we're going to talk about food systems on our next show.
There you go.
With Cam. So stay tuned.